Hello everyone, my name is Cristiane Ely Lemke and I'm very honored to be here talking to you about our research entitled Early Biliteracy, Examining Syntactic Complexity and Thought Organization in the Written Production of 11-year-old Children. This research was also conducted by Janaína Weissheimer, Natália Bezerra Mota, Luciana de Souza Brentano and Ingrid Finger. So let's get started. There has been an increase in the number of children being taught in 2 or more languages. In fact, estimates suggest that bilinguals constitute the majority of the world's populations. Nonetheless, when it comes to teaching bilingual kids, there are still many issues to be considered and discussed, especially when dealing with reading and writing outcomes. Research has emphasized the positive effects of bilingualism and early biliteracy on children's linguistic and cognitive abilities. However, the extent to which one system affects the other is not totally understood. Also, it is important to say that there is a need for pedagogies that support young bilingual children's biliteracy. More studies need to be conducted in order for teachers to have better knowledge about what their kids are able to do in their 2 languages or more. And we also know that bilingual children who speak 2 languages that overlap in their writing system often outperform monolingual children on literacy-related tasks. The study by Petito et al. Also explained that the exposure to a more transparent orthography, like Spanish, helps children read in English, which is a more opaque form of orthography. So we do know that children can learn to read in 2 languages at the same time. This is a fact. But how does this process happen? Dworin also talks about the dynamic and flexible process in which children's transactions with 2 written languages mediate their learning in both languages. That is, what is held in one language impacts the other. What the students learn in his or her L1 impacts his or her L2, and the contrary too, and the opposite too. With this in mind, and also different researches and studies conducted on bilingual education and how children develop their L1 and L2 writing processes, we are wondering to know what happens in Brazil with our students that are learning their second language at school. So the objective of this study is to investigate the effects of bilingualism and biliteracy on the levels of thought organization, connectivity measures, and syntactic complexity in the written production in Portuguese and English in a group of children that are enrolled in a bilingual school in the south of Brazil. In order to learn more about this situation, there are 4 research questions that we would like to answer. Number 1, is there a difference on the measures of thought organization and connectivity in the student's written production in Portuguese and in English? 2, is there a difference in terms of syntactic complexity in the student's written production English and in English and in Portuguese? 3, is there a correlation in the development of thought organization and connectivity in the written production of the participants in Portuguese and in English? And the last one, does graph analysis serve as a predictor of the level of syntactic complexity in L1 and L2? To answer these questions, we had a group of 50 children enrolled in 5th and 6th grades in a bilingual school in the south of Brazil, working with and helping us with their written productions. It is important to say that their home language is Portuguese, but they have been taught in English and in Portuguese for at least 5 years. 10 hours a week they have English classes or lessons in English, and the other 23 hours are in Portuguese. To assess their writing, we collected in August of 2020 2 writing tasks in different moments, 2 weeks apart. Their writing time was 40 minutes. They were written during online classes, and all the students were with their cameras on so that we could observe what they were doing. The participants were asked to create a narrative with at least 200 words based on a sequence of images that we got from their Cambridge assessment, one in English and one part in Portuguese in a counterbalanced order. Here you can see some examples of the activities they had to do, right? This one was in English, and 2 weeks later they got this one that was in Portuguese. So the group that got the images and the instructions in English first got the Portuguese version 2 weeks later. In order to carry out our analysis, we used the computational tool Speech Graphs, which was designed by Mota and colleagues in Brazil. A speech graph represents the sequential relationship of spoken words in a verbal report, with each word represented as a node and the sequence between successive words represented as a direct edge. The software also calculates a number of attributes for each text file. And we used in our research 2 specific attributes for connectivity. LCC, which is the largest connected component, that is a number of words connected by an edge, and LSC, the largest strongly connected component, which is a stricter measure, and it shows the number of words connected by directed edges. Well, so the results. As expected, connectivity measures, LCC and LSC, showed a significant advantage for the texts written in Portuguese, which is the children's native language. In other words, connectivity measures were higher in Portuguese. We also found a moderate correlation between children's connectivity attributes in L1 and L2. It was not a very robust correlation, it was moderate, but positive. Yeah? So there was a significant positive correlation between connectivity measures in their productions in L1 and L2, indicating that linguistic development occurs in parallel and in the same proportion in the 2 languages of the bilingual, as we expected. To illustrate our point, we brought here 2 graphs of the same kid showing that the child who scored high in his L1 was also a child who scored high in his L2. Here we brought an example of a child who scored low in connectivity in L1 and in L2. An analysis of the children's graphs indicated that the students' development occurs in the same proportion in both languages, with an advantage for their L1. It is important, however, to keep examining their productions in order to find out if this difference will eventually disappear. To analyze their syntactic complexity, we used the number of T units. A T unit is a single independent clause and any subordinate clauses that are attached to it. So, in the comparison between the averages of syntactic complexity measures, differences between the textual productions in the two languages were expected, with a significant advantage for the texts written in Portuguese. So in other words, a greater number of T units was expected in the Portuguese texts compared to the English productions. This hypothesis was also correct, with a greater number of T units in Portuguese. Also, we found a weak but significant correlation in the number of T units in their L1 and L2, meaning that students that are able to produce more connected sentences and language are also, in their L1, are the same students to produce more connected and complex texts in their L2. This is also to illustrate the yellow parts are the T units in their L2 and the T units in their L1. Here again you can see the connectivity and syntactic complexity in L1 and in L2, indicating that graph analysis serves as a good predictor of the level of syntactic complexity of children in L1 and in L2. So there was a significant positive correlation between the measures of connectivity and syntactic complexity. So, as expected, a significant difference between the written productions in the two languages of the bilingual was found, with an advantage for texts written in Portuguese, the children's L1. The analysis of the connectivity measures revealed the difference between the written productions and the two languages of the bilingual, with a significant advantage for texts written in Portuguese. We also found a significant positive correlation between connectivity measures and syntactic complexity in their L1 and L2 productions, indicating that graph analysis serves as a good predictor of children's syntactic complexity levels in L1 and L2. Our results also indicated a direct relationship between thought connectivity and syntactic complexity in both languages. And as we've seen, as children advanced in the development of more complex writing strategies in Portuguese, they seem to progress in their written production in English to the same extent. Our data reinforce the importance of teachers assessing students' written production in their two languages, considering a heteroglossic view of bilingualism. Understanding how a simple, fast, and non-invasive evaluation of speech connectedness is associated with cognitive and scholastic performance may help to develop better intervention strategies in naturalistic settings. Our next steps include the assessment of oral production in the two languages, a more consistent measure of L2 proficiency, a monolingual control group, and the use of random graph analysis per participant, as well as the collection of data through a whole year with the same participants, which is something we have already started doing. Well, we thank you so much for your patience, for listening to us. And if you have any questions, you can email us. Thank you so very much.